So welcome to the Autism Workshop. My name is Dr. Susan Shapiro. I am a professor here at Touro Graduate School of Education, and I'm in the B through 2 department. And welcome. I am sure this is what you wanted to do right before Thanksgiving. You said, I want to stay on a really long Zoom and get a workshop in. And here you are. So welcome. So first off, I'm going to explain a little bit about how this is going to work tonight. So you are in this workshop. This is required by the state of New York in order to get your teaching license. It's one of the workshops that are required. There's child abuse, there's DASA, there's SAFE, and this is one of those workshops. So how it works is I will be asking for several check-ins throughout the night. I will be also asking that you have hopefully completed your initial baseline survey before you started the class. That's going to be one of the check-ins that we're going to use to make sure that you're here. At the end, there's also going to be a survey that we're going to use to make sure that you're here as well, that you learned something. You will, at the end of this workshop, you will be given a P for pass. If you don't complete both of these surveys and everything and all the check-ins, you won't get one. You'll get a withdrawn, never attended. You'll be able to take this workshop again. This workshop will not go straight into your Teach account. It will be in your Touro account. When Touro takes all the information and brings it over to the state, brings it over to the Teach account, at that point, this workshop will be checked off. So if you go in your Teach account and you're like, I know I took autism, what's going on here? It's here, but it'll be on your transcript. So it's a little bit of a sort of a roundabout process, but that's how it works. Now, this workshop is mandated by the state of New York, and each section is required. So I tried to make it fun and engaging, and I hope that you'll enjoy and learn from what you see. But each one of these things that you are doing is actually required. So we're meeting the requirements of the autism workshop, which are pretty detailed. So anyway, welcome. Now, the first thing we're going to do is, usually when I start a class like this, I like to go around and I like to do an icebreaker, but this is a very large class, so we can't do that. So instead, what we're going to do is, I'm going to go to we are going to do our own icebreaker in small groups. So let's see if I can show you this icebreaker. Here we go. Okay, so in breakout rooms, there's going to be 2 or 3 of you in each breakout room. You're going to introduce yourself to the other people who are in the room, and you're going to answer these questions. If money and time were no object, what would you be doing right now? So that's assuming you wouldn't be in an autism workshop, but who knows? And tell the group about your worst haircut ever. Now, sometimes people are like, I have always had the best haircuts. Then talk about your best haircut.
Hi, I'm Ben.
Hi, I'm Tiana.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
What was your worst haircut?
Probably in 5th grade. I got an uneven bob. So then my hair kept growing out uneven lengths. So
it's pretty bad.
What about you?
I went to a barbershop and they didn't really listen to what I said and made me have like angles, like 90-degree angles. Yeah.
That's not good.
Okay, so how did you know when it was your turn to talk?
We used the force.
Use the force. So what force was it that told you that it was your turn?
For my group, we just spoke at the same time. We're like, hi, and one person speak, then the next, then the next.
So you started at the same time, but then you started to take turns?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. What else happened in other people's groups? What gave you the knowledge that it was your turn? How did you engage?
There was a second of pause.
There was a pause.
So one person would speak, there was a quick pause, and then it's the next person's turn.
Okay, great. And how else did you do it?
by asking another question at the end. So like responding and then saying, what about you? And then that's kind of how the other person would know to speak.
Okay. What other
I think
place? Yeah.
I think in our group, we were very lucky. It was only 3 of us, and each one of us took turn without actually like trying to talk over. And we even had a conversation. It was fun.
Oh, good. So you didn't have to lay it out. You knew who was going to go next.
It was like so natural.
Natural.
Yeah, very natural. We had this
Okay.
feeling.
Great. Any other experiences with this?
I like to well, I was the first one that went, and then I kind of just said, does anyone else want to go? Simple, I guess, but it worked.
You gave a verbal cue.
Yep.
Yep. Okay. Any other strategies? So as you start to think about this, there are strategies involved when we talk about social cues. There are things that we innately know. People use the words to describe it as natural. People knew to wait for the pause. When people felt that other people were reluctant to go next, they use leading questions. And all of this comes very, very naturally to some people. To other people, it can be extremely difficult. And when we think about people that are neurodivergent, we think about autism spectrum disorder, this can be one of the issues that children can face. Now, it's not every child. So when we're talking about kids who have autism spectrum disorder, oh, hold on, can you see my screen now? Great. When there's kids who have autism spectrum disorder, this may not be what they're experiencing. It may be difficult, but that might not be their main issue. They could have lots of different things that are going on that leads them to be diagnosed as having autism spectrum disorder. So we use this word autism to describe so many different experiences that people have. And this is a nice little video that sort of illustrates that. I have to go out and back in again, so I want to make sure you can hear it. When we think about autistic kids and we think about autistic families, I think this is a really beautiful example of one family's experience.
There's a lot of things I think of when I'm getting ready to take Jack out anywhere, but especially the grocery store. We've had moments where he has gotten away from me or smashed something on the ground or said a huge swear word out loud or been rude. And it's a long, arduous road to getting him to be in a way that he's comfortable with in public. He loves the grocery store, but in preparing him, he requires quite a bit of backstory. In the autism community, we call them social stories, in terms of how long the trip's going to take, how we're going to drive there, what's going to happen once we're there. All right, buddy, here we are. We're at the store. You ready?
Yeah.
What are we going to get here?
Yeah. For the Easter bunny cake.
For the Easter bunny cake. So let's talk about what we have to do before we go into the store. I'm always sort of taking Jack's temperature, if you will. And by that I mean trying to figure out what kind of mood he's in. Do you want to do some jumping jacks to keep your body calm?
No.
No.
I'm good.
You're good. All right, let's go. Okay, buddy. Wait for me. Don't run out on me now. Don't run out. Okay, okay.
Walk this way.
No, we're going to walk into the store.
I walk this way and see what the car.
Oh, you want to see the car? All right. Once I'm in the store, there's a lot to think about. My mind is like a running dialogue. Okay, he's jumping now. Let me make sure he moves away from that little girl. Oh, wow, he's reaching for the orange. He might collapse the pile. Okay, he's asked to go to the bathroom. Can I stretch him for a little bit longer? Although he's tall and he's almost 13, he really operates emotionally around 6 or 7.
How many?
Is good. How many? 2 is good. Oh, buddy, slow down. Jackaboo, slow down. He's still a little bit of a wanderer. We have to always make sure our eyes are on him because he can get distracted by something that looks interesting and just kind of take off on you. So I want him to have some independence, but I also really have to watch him. What are you looking at, buddy?
I don't know. I don't know where the jelly beans are.
All right. So kind of getting agitated because he can't find what he wants, but we'll figure it out. Do you want me to help you? Out of the mouth, buddy, out of the mouth. All right, good, in the cart. Okay, don't touch. No, it's cold. He's very tactile, so he'll touch anything. He will touch the garbage cans. He will touch all the fruit in a pile. I always think that he sees the world almost through his fingers, and so I'm just always aware of where his hands are going. Don't touch, honey, please. No, we're going now. I sort of have to keep an eye on the way he interacts with other people because although I think he's crazy funny and interesting, he does have a very abrupt manner. Okay, watch out, buddy, watch out. He crowds people, he interrupts people, buddy, we have to pay for that, don't open it yet. Okay, can you ask her, how are you? Watching him interact can be a little bit painful, but for the most part, I let it play out. A lot of work goes into a kiddo like Jack, into keeping him safe, into keeping him regulated, into keeping him calm, and to keep him interested, and to keep drawing him back into our world, even when autism's inner world is so much more compelling. So it's a lot of work, but I want everyone to know that I think he's really worth it, because he is just a funny, curious, interesting guy. He is unlike any person I've ever met before in my life, and I want everybody to see that for themselves because he's just a delight to be around.
So some of the objectives of this course is we're going to talk about the characteristics of autism disorder and the importance of early identification, some strategies that we use, common signs of autism, what they look like, the components of a diagnostic evaluation, and tools that we use to help children who are at risk for having autism spectrum disorder. So first off, let me tell you about what it is. It is a neurological disorder that emerges from the time of birth. Now, a lot of times people say autism is something that develops around 2. Well, it actually develops a lot earlier, but you may not see the signs. They may not be as recognizable when children are infants. And autism is different for every individual. And that was one of the things we were talking about. So socializing may be difficult, or it may be another factor that may be difficult. So although it has to hit the criteria, it can be different from every kind of child. There are no medical tests at this point to diagnosis. And when parents are concerned, they should request an EI evaluation and check in with their doctor. And these evaluations are available at no cost in all states. So some characteristics of autism, and we're going to go into a lot of details about this, and you're going to get to see some examples. But it's decreased social interaction and social communication, restricted and repetitive interests and activities, sensory differences, and it affects all ethnic and socioeconomic groups, so rich or poor, doesn't matter. And 31% of children with ASD have an intellectual disability. So as in 2001, 1 in 44 children in the US were diagnosed with autism. That's much higher than it had been previously. One of the reasons we think is that during the pandemic, parents spent a lot of time with their kids, and they got to see a lot of issues that they would have normally missed. And so that might have been one of the reasons that it was diagnosed at the level that it was diagnosed then. Boys are more likely to be diagnosed than girls. But one of the reasons we think that this diagnosis may be so different is because girls are more likely to camouflage. So they can make it look like they're having a conversation. They may be able to look like they're not having issues with sensory. But the actual fact is they know how to blend in a lot more, but they still may be encountering the same issues as the boys. The boys just don't seem to hide it in the same way the girls do. Now, the reason that we want to help kids with autism spectrum disorder is not that we want everyone to be neurotypical. That's not our aim. The reason that we do it is because there are issues associated with it. So we want to make sure that these issues can really be downplayed for them so that they can live a life that's a little bit easier. One of the things we know that 40% of the people can't speak very well. Nearly half of the people will run away from safe situations. 28% have self-injurious behavior. They headbang, they arm bite, they scratch. A lot of kids get bullied. And they have associated challenges too, like attention deficit disorder, anxiety, depression, stomach issues, sleep problems, and epilepsy. So clearly the kids have issues associated with having autism spectrum disorder, and we want to reduce those challenges. And there's lots of strengths associated with it. So there can be high IQ scores. They may have better enhanced visuals, and they might hear things that we can't hear. They may focus in a way that's very intense. They may remember things that people who are neurotypical have problems remembering. And so they might also, and there's a lot of research that's going on about this, be more moral and have more honesty. And so there's pluses and there's minuses in everything that goes on with people, but we want to make sure that we can help them have the best lives they can have. So we don't know what causes autism, but one of the things we know, it's not caused by vaccines. It typically shows up and parents start to notice around the time that kids get their first big barrage of vaccines, when they get their MMR and their DTP and all of those other shots that are combined. So when that happens, it's right around the time we see the problems, which is why people like Jenny McCarthy associated this with autism with vaccines. There is no link between the two. If a child's sibling has autism spectrum disorder, that child's more likely to be diagnosed with it. And one of the reasons why is the parent might be tuned into it already. There are genetic conditions, and this is going to be in your final survey, so you might want to pay attention to some of these. Genetic conditions like Fragile X may lead to higher rates of autism, but it's not causal, so we don't know. We know that it happens, that when we see this happening is just before and during and immediately after birth. So something happens during that time that might lead to autism. Could be a flood of hormones. We're not really sure. Children born to older parents are also at a greater risk, but once again, they might be more attuned to see issues that are going on with their kids, so they might be more likely to be diagnosed. And the average age of diagnosis is just over 4 years. And children from low-income families are diagnosed even later. So they're much less likely to be able to benefit from a lot of the interventions that are available. So hang in with me, because I know you're all going, oh, she's not going to talk the whole time. I'm not going to talk the whole time. Trust me, there will be some things to get involved, but these are things that you need to know. We know that early intervention is effective, and that the more access people have to early intervention, the less issues they have that are associated with autism spectrum disorder. So it's really important that we catch it early on so we can help these kids. So they can do it with their pediatrician, they can do it at school. There's lots of places where they can get this evaluated. So we need to know the early signs of autism. Now, you may say, I don't work with kids this young. I'm never going to see a kid this young to see these signs. But by understanding where kids start, we can really see where they will progress. And during this workshop, we will be working from the early signs of autism to diagnosis to how we handle it in the schools. So you're going to see the scope all the way through. So when we're doing an evaluation, what has to happen is they have an interview with the parent and the caregiver. So this is after a parent says or a physician says, I think that my child, there's something wrong. Could you do an evaluation? The first thing they do is they're going to interview the parent or the caregiver. They're going to review their medical and their school records. They're going to do a cognitive and developmental assessment. They're going to watch them play. They're going to measure how well they function, and they're going to do a medical examination. So there are sensory differences. They might be hyper or hyporeactive to sensory input. They may show defensiveness to some kind of sensory stimuli, like they might not like the touch of certain things, and they may show a high tolerance for pain. So one of the things we see is unusual visual fixations. And let's take a look at what that looks like. All right, so we're going to watch this child who has a red flag for autism spectrum disorder and his unusual sensory interest. Take a look.
One more thing in there.
Can you hear him? Okay.
Look at that.
Quack, 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 quack.
It's a duck.
Quack, 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 quack. It's big. He's gonna eat.
Say hungry duck.
What's he gonna eat? Quack, 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 quack. Squeeze it. Feels good. On your mouth. He likes to bring things to his mouth to check them out more too. You show Ducky to Daddy. Let Daddy see Duck.
I know the duck, buddy. Is it fluffy feeling? You're silly.
Feels weird, doesn't it?
Let me hold the ducky, Ethan. I want to see the ducky.
Give Duck to Daddy.
Let me see the
Daddy.
ducky. Can I hold the ducky?
Yeah.
Thank you, big boy.
What did you notice about this child?
The child is not really engaged, and the child is not listening to commands and having any nonverbal responses to understanding what's going on to the situation. The child is more focused with the ball and not really listening to the instructions relating to the ball.
What else do people see? You're just gonna have to talk if you're, because I can't see everyone.
The child was very much preoccupied with the toy and involving sensory experience. He licked the toy, he looked at the toy, he touched the toy. So 3 senses, right? But what happened is that the sounds that the parent or who is that lady, an educator?
Yeah.
The sounds of what they were making, quack, quack, the auditory stimulation didn't work for this child. He did not, I don't think he registered and associated quack quack with the duck. Yet, somehow, give the toy to Daddy, he did give a toy. So that means there is a certain, I mean, to me, it looked like almost like you have a trained ear. And when you're trained, like give it to Daddy, he will give, but he's not registering for something new. Maybe he's not ready to learn something new yet.
What else do we see? Any other thoughts?
But I noticed that before he actually gave the toy to Daddy, the lady had to tap his arm and like literally show him Daddy. So he only responded because it was sensory. So then he turned his head and he gave the ducky to Daddy.
And I don't even know if he was necessarily giving the ducky to Daddy as much as he was like doing what he was told. He was moving the duck over and then lost complete interest in it. But he had fully explored the senses with that duck. He had felt it, he had licked it, he was smelling it. I mean, that child was completely wrapped up in the sensory stimulation of that ball, of that duck. And so if you had a child who wasn't neurodivergent like this, what you might have seen him just hand the duck over and had some type of interaction, but we completely lost this with Ethan because what he was doing instead was his entire focus was on that. There was no expected interaction with the adults. So yeah, I mean, we can see that we definitely have some sensory issues going on here. Another thing that we see is atypical repetitive behaviors. So let's take a look at this and what we might see. Now we're going to look at the typical child, and then we're going to see a red flag for a child with autism spectrum.
Get smart. Oh, look. Oh, here it is. Oh, Oh, again, last time. Oh, it's getting smaller. Getting smaller. Whoop. Says you tricked me. You took that other balloon. There's balloon. You give it to Mama? That's exciting. That's his excitement. I see that. Is it pretty? Do you want me to blow it up for you? You want Mama to help? Is it more exciting if it's blown up? Say that. It's pretty damn exciting. I know. I'll blow it. Can you give it to me, Jason? Jason. Mama. Give it to me. Let's give it to Mama. Give it to Mama. There you go. Mama blow. You may want to stretch it, Melissa, first.
So what did we see here between these two kids?
With a typical student, the student noticed that the balloon was being blown, and the student handed the balloon back to the individual who blew it so that the person could blow it again. Whereas the red flag child, he was fixated on the balloon itself and he was just flapping it around, but not really, like, he didn't notice that that was the activity, that it was blown. So he didn't give it back to the lady. He was just fixated on the balloon itself.
Yeah. What else did we see?
I feel like the first kid was a little indifferent. Once it deflated and it was like, oh, give it away. Okay, cool. And he just gave it away. But then the second kid just couldn't get off of it. So that's pretty much all I'm saying.
What about the, oh, go ahead.
He's shaking the balloon like constantly and like repeating that same the same thing that he's doing. He's not like giving it back to the educator even though she's asking. He just keeps shaking it.
I think he kind of zoned out. Like he went into his own little world, and you can hear both adults trying to talk to him, and he just didn't hear them. While the first one like looked around, made eye contact. This one was just steady on the balloon, and that's it.
And when the balloon was taken away, the movement continued. So he wasn't, I mean, the first kid knew it was cause and effect. He knew that someone had blown up the balloon, and if he handed the balloon back, he would get what he wanted, which was he wanted to see the balloon deflate. So that was fun. This child's fun is the repetition of movement. We don't know if he's having fun, but we know it's something that's serving a purpose because he moves. And then even when the balloon goes, the behavior is continuing. So in a child who's neurotypical, they're going to make eye contact. They're going to want to see cause and effect. They're going to want to do something else. They're interacting with the environment. This child is only interacting with his own sensation. And they call this stimming. So he's moving, and that's what the activity is for him, balloon or not. So that's a difference that we see with that repetitious movement that really is for him the play, or not necessarily the play, but it's serving a purpose. All right, we're going to go back over here. Okay, another issue we have is communication. Non-verbal communication, develop, maintaining, understanding relationships, and social reciprocity, which we'll be talking about quite a bit. So in order to do that, the first thing that we want to do is communicate. So children with autism spectrum disorder have a lot of delayed age-appropriate sound. Babbling comes later. So let's take a look at this one. So we're going to take first a look at the typical and then the atypical.
What do you want? Both of them, please. Oh. By you. Trucks. That is a truck. Lots of trucks. Where's the garbage truck? Do you see it? That's an ice cream truck. Ice cream. Where's Daddy's truck? That kind of looks like Daddy's truck. It's a red truck. Yeah, I like it. Is that the ice cream truck and Daddy's truck? Ooh. Ambulance. Yeah. Woo, 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 woo. Yeah. Oh, there's some fruit. Apples. Back of the truck.
Cheerios. Cheerios. There you go. Cheerios. So good. Almost strong enough to get it open by himself, but not quite. Thank goodness. You want more? Okay. He understands that really clearly. 1, 2. More Cheerios. Those are good. Crunchy. What?
You're not lucky in the eye.
No look in the eye. Mower, but pat to let me know, but he's not using his word. You want mower? Ethan, mower? Can you use your words and tell me mower? You want me to put it right here? Okay. All sorts of cues for me, but no really verbal ones. He's letting me know in other ways where to put it, what he wants. Bye-bye, Cheerios. Those were good. You were.
So the first thing I just wanted to point out is that the first child was 15 months. This child is almost 2 years. So what do you see in terms of, I'm sorry? Oh, what do you see the difference between these two kids?
One of the children is the earlier one from video 1. They're very verbal, even though it's not like clear, obviously, what they're saying because they're still young. They are, making noise, like speaking, like. Whereas this one, this child is, using verbal cues, not really iterating anything vocally, more, pointing and using hand gestures.
Yeah. What, absolutely. What else do we see?
The
Also,
child.
Oh, sorry. I was going to say the first child he was super excited. He was getting excited about things. He was pointing at things, listening to what his mother was saying and going off of that. But with the second child, the child knew what he wanted, but wasn't able to express it verbally. And I think he was getting a little bit aggressive, but it's not really like super aggressive, but like, I want this, but like, I can't explain to you what I want.
I think both children cognitively understand the instructions. The second child that has ASD obviously has a problem with expressive language. Yet, you can clearly see that he understands the instruction and he understands what needs to be done to get what he wants. Yet, he is not able to verbalize his needs.
Now, one of the things is that one child is mimicking an entire conversation. So he's making that sound with the, could everyone mute if they're not speaking, because otherwise we get weird feedback? Thank you. The child is mimicking the sounds of an entire conversation. He doesn't have the words, but he's not asking for anything. He's talking about what he's seeing in the book. So he's pointing to pictures, he's making a conversation. The second child is simply asking for what he wants. So we're not having any type of conversation. We are having, I want more Cheerios. This is how I'm going to get it, is I'm going to point to the table and I'm going to make as much contact with you as I need for you to do what I want. So instead of having that babbling, that talking, that imitating of conversation, he is simply using gesturing to achieve a goal. So even cognitively speaking, there's a big gap because he's not interested in that conversation. He's interested in language as a means to an end. And I think you're right, Diana. He doesn't have the words to say what he wants, but he's also not interested in that extended conversation. Nicholas, did you have something to say?
Nope, that was it.
Okay. All right. Terrific. All right. Another thing that we have is delayed nonverbal communication. So there's, when you were in your groups, one of the things that we were talking about is how did you know it was time to speak? There's lots of ways that we talk to each other that doesn't necessarily involve words. So there's things like shared attention, which we're going to be talking about, efforts to gain the attention of another person, and the facial expressions. So let's see, I think there's one connected with us. We're going to look at typical, wait, is this the same?
Horsey, that's right. Duck, duck. Yeah, more duck, that's right. What was that? What is that? Fox. Fox. That's a fox, that's right. But we know what this is. Turtle! Look! That's a bee. Bunny rabbit.
So what do we see? How is he gaining, how are we seeing nonverbal communication going on here?
He's pointing to the pictures, letting them know he know the animal.
Yeah, and he's making that eye contact each time, looking down, looking up. You know, we see delight on his face. We see questions on his face. There's a lot going on in this kid. So he's saying a lot of things without necessarily having to have the words to verbalize it. So let's take a look at what happens with Evan.
Shake, shake, shake. Maybe Mimi will give you more.
You want Mimi to help you? Ethan, give it to Mimi if you want me to help you open it. Do you want me to help you open it?
Want more? More. More Cheerios. Well, give them to me and I'll give you more. Can you give them to me? Maybe. Uh-huh. And I'll open. Open.
So what's the difference here with this child, with Evan?
I would just say, like, from the first child to the second child, this child obviously, you know, eyes are down for the most part. The body language is very secluded, like isolated almost. It wasn't until, you know, they said something that, you know, struck his curiosity, as in more Cheerios, where he kind of got excited, I guess, if you will, and, you know, kind of then started to look up. But then, even then, it wasn't very like the speaking and what he was saying was not of, you know, it wasn't doable. Like he, you know, he wanted more Cheerios, so he'd be up. He said yes, right, but he didn't say, you know, yes please or anything along those lines. But besides that, he was more isolated, kind of quiet, kind of silent, not as verbal.
Yeah, and absolutely. And it was hard to know at certain points if someone had tried to open that Cheerio box for him, if he would have wanted that, because he was holding it to his body and looking down and turning around, but he wasn't making eye contact. The other child, when he wanted something, he was very expressive. This child hasn't really developed that, and he's not making the connection with the other people. And that's a really big red flag. We see a lot of red flags with Evan, not making eye contact, spending a lot of time with sensory objects, doing self-stim. So there's a lot going on with Evan, and we can see the difference between that neurotypical and a child wrestling with issues that would be connected to autism spectrum disorder. So I'm going to move us forward quite a bit. Another thing we might see is uneven attention to as they start to develop. Now, these are things you need to know. It used to be that there were all of these things that were attached to autism spectrum disorder. So they would say Asperger's, they would say a child have disintegrative disorder, pervasive developmental disorder. All of that now falls under autism spectrum disorder, except Asperger's syndrome. So Asperger was a Nazi. And so people don't like to use it anymore. And also it doesn't fall, and now it falls under autism spectrum disorder. However, many people feel that they were diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, with Asperger's, and they self-identify. And they have groups that are geared towards Asperger's. And so that can be what people want to identify with. Absolutely. We don't take that away from people. So if people want to keep those own diagnoses, they can. But right now, almost everything falls under the umbrella of autism spectrum disorder. We don't break it down anymore. There are 3 levels of autism. The first requires very little support. So they can be in a general ed classroom. They may have some difficulty with social interactions, but they still really do fine in a general ed classroom. The second level requires more support. And so usually you'll have someone there to help them. And you may have a para, you may have a SIA. And the third level has substantial support where they really need to be in self-contained classrooms, and they may need one-on-one attention. So these are the 3 levels of autism. So we are now going to go to our next group activity that we're going to do. And this is going to be, and I'm going to share this with you once I get to the course. Just want to make sure it's the right one. Nope, that's wrong. Okay, so I'm going to open up the in-class resource conversation, and I'm going to share it with you so you can see what it is. Now, oftentimes, and this, by the way, this discussion part of it that we're doing now is required by the state. We give resources to the parents in our classroom when we see something has happened. And this list is a typical list that people give when we know something might be wrong. We want to give them supports if a child's been diagnosed with autism. And half the time, these lists don't work. So your job in your groups is to go through, you're going to see the group number. There are 9 groups. You are going to check out your one resource. If the link is incorrect, you're going to find the right link. And you're going to give us information. You're going to say the updated contact information, the resources that are available for families through the site, the ages they serve, how to navigate the information presented by the site, and would you recommend this service for your children in your classroom and why?